grief and loss, trauma, mental health, alcohol and drug use, gender roles, anger management, self-esteem, sexual abuse, domestic violence, and the pressures of societal norms or real-life issues that affect men. Join Rolando, psychotherapist, author, life coach, and motivational speaker that has dedicated his profession to working with men to find a healthier alternative to cope and handle these stressors. Rolando believes that men are lacking in social, psychological, emotional, and spiritual support that is necessary for a lifestyle that promotes healthy masculinity. We invite you to join us on XY Spark, where we discuss issues that men face. At XY Spark, we believe there's a spark in you.
Thank you for joining us here this evening on XY Spark. This is Rolando. We are so excited that you've decided to join us. We want to say a special shout out to those who are joining us live on YouTube and on Facebook. And for our listeners who normally join us on our podcast live, we hope that you saw our message. We sent out a special invitation to you to come join us live so you can see who is the originator of XY Spark and what we're doing. And this evening, we are so excited, guys. I'm telling you, I'm bursting with joy because I have a good friend of mine who has decided to join us this evening. You know, he's someone that I've known now for a number of years. You know, you may be wondering who is that, not so bad looking young man that we have here with us tonight. He's a good friend of mine. His name is Lyle Notice. And I want to tell you a little bit about Lyle Notice because tonight we're talking about youth, young men, and healthy masculinity. And I've invited Lyle Notice, Dr. Lyle Notice, to be better identified. He is someone who really has a passion for the young men in the community, similar to Rolando, who has a passion for men. And so let me tell you a little bit about Lyle before I bring him in. Believe it or not, Lyle grew up in Toronto. He grew up in Toronto. Okay. And from the young age, Lyle had a passion. Believe it, you're going to be surprised to hear what his passion was. Lyle had a passion for stage. Okay. And he had his sights set on becoming an Hollywood actor. So, guys, listen, if you have never seen a aspiring Hollywood actor, close, but here is one right now. Okay. But as Lyle had that quest, things changed for him. Lyle, he received what he refers to as a special call on his life. He received a special call on his life, and he went to and became a minister. Yes, he went and became a minister, believe it or not. So look at that shift from aspiring to Hollywood to becoming a minister. And so Lyle went to the seminary and he became a pastor. Okay. And not only did he become a pastor, but later on he got called and he migrated from Toronto and came here to Alberta, where he became a youth director in Alberta. And so he became more engrossed. He might have not gone to Hollywood, but he was he was setting the stage in other areas in a spiritual sense. And so, Lyle, believe it or not, he completed his program, a Master's of Divinity at Andrews University. And guess what? He completed that program in what is called urban ministry. Did I get it right?
Yes.
Urban ministry. Okay,
Yes.
so the man went and he got himself more equipped and more empowered because he recognized that our men, young men, needed some guidance, some direction, and so he did that. And so right now, believe it or not, Lyle is the associate youth director of the Alberta conference. He's a husband. He's a husband and father, has two beautiful kids who their names, believe it or not, I don't want to destroy them in any way. So let me, but if I do, Lyle, forgive me. His wife, I can pronounce her name. Her name is Sherry. Okay. And then he also has a daughter who is Marlo Ray.
Yes.
Okay. And a son who, Cairo.
That's
Did I
right.
get them
Yeah.
correctly?
You got
Okay,
them right. Yeah.
that was close, guys. That was close. I tried. Okay. And so this evening, Lyle, we're so happy that you decided to be with us. And we're going to be talking tonight about youth. and healthy masculinity. But before we do that, tell us, Lyle, why did you choose youth? What about young men that grabbed you? Why you decided to do that?
You know, it's interesting. I think I've always had a love for helping and assisting and pouring into young men because just of my upbringing and background, growing up in Toronto, in Scarborough at the time, and not having enough positive male role models. I had one in high school, Mr. McIntosh, and he made an indelible impression on my life. And I said, man, if I could be that, if I could be Mr. McIntosh to someone else, my life wouldn't be in vain. I think also what happened was when I was pastoring in Ottawa, I started this young men's group called Juvenis. And what we do, we'd bring young men together every Friday night, and we would just talk, we would dialogue. And it was so impactful. I saw the impacts of that. And out of that, two men became pastors, and they're doing so well today. But this idea of creating a safe place, pouring into young men, being an example, a role model, I think that's important to me because that's what saved me.
Mm-hmm. Like one of the things that I'm noticing is there seems to be this gap that's in our community. The younger men, they're looking for a place to connect. The older men are drifting away.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the older men, they're sort of bringing with them some of the older way of being man, you know what I mean?
Right,
And
right,
so
right.
the young men, they are not as, because some of the young men, they're so open now to change, and they're so open to, finding their niche, that there seems to be a gap in there. And as you say, like for example, you found something in Mr. McIntosh, but
Mm-hmm.
there are not many Mr. McIntoshes around.
Right.
So what can we do to help these young men?
You know, it's funny you talk about that because I was just having this conversation with a friend of mine, and and I said that I had I was dealing with the sort of void or absence of my father, and and I learned how to cope throughout the years.
Mhm.
But the impact was not even so much, the emotional impact was not even so much on the sort of strained relationship I have with my father, but what the negative effect of that is I had almost this negative view of older male individuals. I think,
Mm.
I looked as coming from young, like I was only 16, because something happened at that point in my life where there was a disconnect with my father. And so when it came to male figures and male authority figures, I would often, sort of have this sort of this idea or mentality. I'm not going to listen to them. They have nothing to say to me. And I think that was a
Mhm.
direct impact of the lack of my father in my life. And so over the years, it's been difficult as a young man coming now into adulthood, connecting with older men, because I don't want anyone to tell me what to do.
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
I'm dealing with not having a male in my life at that time. And the outcome of that is rejection of males. And so I had to deal with that. But I would say that for the young men today, a lot of them see the older guys as old heads, or
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
speaking in an urban context from, let's say, from the hood, so to speak. The way how it works is the youngers, or they would have, or the YGs, they would have an OG, and so the OG on the block would spit game, would spit, wisdom, would spit life to them. And so it was this sort of mutual relationship, because if they found an OG that was trustworthy, that was sort of like worthy of the relationship, they would listen to them. And
Mhm.
so I think that it goes two ways. I'm going to say this, it's a two-way street. Young men need to be able to sort of put their pride aside and say, man, if there's an older male that is that is that is almost worthy to sort of be sought after and looked at, go and find that. We need to get over ourselves and say, you know what, this person I see something in them, I want to be just like that, or something, right?
Mhm.
And then the older male, they also have to be like, wow, I see something in that young man, and I'm going to roll up my sleeves. I'm going to journey with them. I'm going to pour into them. I'm going to invest time into them. And don't get it twisted. Sometimes they come off as too cool for school and they don't want it. but keep on pursuing, because once they find that connection, it works. But you've got to put in the work to do that. And I want to say this as well. When I was growing up in church, I had Brother Ashmead. I had McLean. There were some key men at the time, especially when I was going through that period of that teenage period when I was trying to find myself. I'm acting out. And it's funny because as much trouble and problems that I gave to them in my Sabbath school class, they never stopped reaching out. And I look back at that and I say, even Brother Ashby, to this day, he calls me on my birthday. He would slip me a little $50 here, but he would always check for me. Also, Brother Brathwaite. And so these are three men in my earlier life in church that, even though I was a class act, a class clown, they saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And they continued to strive with me, even though I acted as if I didn't want the relationship. And now, in my older years, I appreciate that. I'm looking back and I'm saying, had it not been for McLean, God, rest his soul, had it not been for Brother Brathwaite and Brother Ashmead, these stalwart men who would put up with me, I don't know where I'd be today. And so I'm saying to the older generation, and sometimes you have to put your traditional thinking to the side, because these young men are going through things, they're in things, and you're going to have to say, man, you know what? This is not my value system, but I'm going to stay with them even in their even in their issues and their challenges, whatever comes their way, whatever comes with it, I'm going to stay here and I'm going to pour in. And I think that's what older men have to do.
Something, Lyle, I really appreciate the impact and the influence and what you shared about your experience having a sort of a wraparound support. But what about those who are not in church? What about those who don't have? What can they do? Because for a guy who's listening to you now and hear you talking about Brother Ashmead and all these people, and he has no idea, like, hey, I've never been to church in my life. Um, so then what do I do? Does that mean I'm hopeless? Where can I turn? What?
I'm gonna say that's a very good question. And for those who don't have a church connection, there are a couple other places that I received light, that I received inspiration, that I received a safe place. And ever since I was probably like 12 or 13, when I would start to go to the barber shop, was a place where the barber at the time, he was actually a man of God, but at the same time, man, what he would do is, as you're cutting or as you're waiting for your hair to get cut, they would be engaged in dialogue about the community, about society, about how to be a better man, about learning rules to the game of life. And so the barbershop was also a place where gems or jewels were literally imparted in me. And so I would say your barbershop. I would also say there was community centers as well, where I would frequent and play basketball, at these community centers. And sometimes the organizers, they were Black, and they looked like me. And so that also made a connection as well, because they were in leadership positions. They were organizing things. And so they would always try to speak life. It's interesting. I just had this journey where the places that I was at, whether that was a barbershop, whether that was church, whether that was the community center, there were these male figures at times that had the foreknowledge to say, man, these youth, they are our future. And so we've got to do all we can to protect them and to pour into them and invest in them. So, for the young man who's not connected to church, I also think, there's friends and families, but there's definitely places where, you can go to get and find that connection.
There are a lot of young men, and Lyle, we're losing a lot of our young men.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of our young men, we're losing them. Years ago, I worked in an urban city in Alberta, and there were so many young men that just needed direction.
Mm-hmm.
They were hooked on drugs. They were in the wrong crowd. They were in gangs. They needed direction.
Hmm.
You know, some of them weren't listening to their parents anymore, and they kind of get to that place where I'm now a man. And at XY Spark, as we talk about restoring healthy masculinity, one of the passions that we have is, you know, looking at it through your lens, how do you think we can reach some of these men? How do you
Yeah.
think we can connect with them and say, hey, listen, we're not inviting you to church, we're inviting you to experience something that is more empowering, safe, healthy.
Hmm.
How do we help them?
I
What
think
do you
I,
think?
I think a lot of the times young men suffer from a lack of purpose. You see,
Mm,
when you have a purpose, that pushes you past certain pain, that pushes you past certain places, because you know that you've got to fulfill this thing that you have. You're so hungry, you're thirsty
mm,
that you've got purpose, something that is propelling you forward. And so, if we could create spaces that are safe, that are authentic, that are organic, that allow men to find their purpose, I think that they would be better for it. I go back to using these examples in my life. Um, Around the time that I was struggling with the absence of my father at 15 and that sort of thing, growing up in Toronto, there was a lot of things to get involved in that were not healthy, that were illegal. But
mhm,
somehow God allowed there to be these safe places. And sometimes they weren't spiritual, they weren't religious in nature. There was a place called the Playground, downtown Toronto. And that's where I learned how to DJ. I learned how to make beats. I learned how to do graffiti. I learned about hip hop. And so the facilitators were actually teaching life skills through the curriculum of hip hop. That spoke to me because I was listening to hip hop. And so I gained a lot of the skills that I have today artistically, creatively from the playground. And so I say that to say, if we could create centers of influence, it doesn't have to
mhm,
be a church building, but it could be a building that has a music studio, that has, sports, that has gym equipment, bodybuilding. We need to create opportunities where these men can find themselves and find their passions and develop it. I'm telling you, once you take, let's say if you're dealing specifically with a kid in the hood, you give them something to focus on where they feel good at it, they feel affirmed, they have a skill or talent,
mhm,
all that other stuff will slide to the side. And so
mm,
I think it's about creating spaces, creating an
mhm,
impact through places that people can enter to go to find their creative self, find
mm,
purpose. I think
mhm.
that if we do that, I think we're going to see a lot of kids that are not caught up in the street life and caught up in negative activities.
Mhm. You know, I'm in mental health, Lyle, and I'm telling you, some of the most challenging uh, group that you can connect with are men, and I'm not just talking about youth now. I'm talking about also older men. A lot of older men are not sure who they are. A lot of older men are not sure if they are fit enough to be a good role model
Hmm.
because they too are doubting that. And so, what I find happens is a lot of the younger men know they end up gravitating towards whatever is available, and and
Hmm.
and, and that sometimes become the elephant in the room, because now whatever is available oftentimes is not the healthy piece. And you
Hmm.
said something powerful about finding purpose, because finding purpose, I mean, let's be frank, we've been experiencing, for example, COVID-19 now since March, and a lot of young men now, they are isolated. They can't go play ball, for example.
Hmm.
They can't go. The gym were closed down again because of this
Hmm.
second
True.
wave that we're experiencing. You can't go next door really, because you may have. So that is adding to what already been going on. And I find a lot of our young men now, since they have legalized the marijuana, a lot of young men are finding comfort there,
Hmm.
where they're using a lot of drugs to find the. And what else can we do for these young men? Because it, for me, at XY Spark, we are just acknowledging that our youth, our young men, we should seek to try to see what more we can do to
Mm-hmm.
reach and to connect with them, and what more we can do to educate our older men too, to say, hey, listen, um, become a mentor,
Mm-hmm.
see a young man who has some potential, and let's see if we can bring him in and connect with him. If his dad is not around, and if dad is around, how do we bring dad to the table and say, hey, dad, listen, um, what do you need from us? How can we
I,
help you?
I think what's important to acknowledge is mental health. I think that a lot of the times, and I don't want to paint everyone with the same broad stroke brush, but a lot of the time males feel inadequate to even give what they don't have, right? And so
Mm,
they could have some sort of emotional trauma that has taken place. And what happens is there's a form of escapism. And so they pacify that with all other things instead of dealing with that particular issue. And so that's why I would say also mental health and seeking professional help is important. I think that when you talk about psychologists and counseling and therapy, that's something that we also have to pass down to men in general, because there's a lot of wounds that have not been healed as yet. And it's this continuous cycle. The hurt and the pain is so much. And so what happens, we dampen it with drugs, with alcohol, with women, you name it. And I think that until we are able to own our stuff and our issue and admit that there are some things that we're struggling with, that we are broken inside, I think that it's going to be hard for us to go forward and move on in a positive sort of way. And so I would also just once again encourage men, young or old, get that help. We've sort of, to a certain extent, I know within the church realm, and I'm speaking from that because that's the hat I wear many times, but we've demonized and we've sort of created this false narrative around psychology and help for that matter. You don't have enough faith, or seeking, you're less than if you're seeking help from someone else. But I think that it's important for us, in order to move forward, if we address the issues, the pain, the problems, instead of covering it up. Because it's this never-ending cycle. For instance, a lot of men suffer from not receiving affirmation. They didn't have that positive male figure, that male, whether that's an uncle or a brother or a father, they didn't get that. And so what they're doing is they're seeking affirmation from everywhere else, and not understanding that no one else can affirm you like yourself. Until you got to that place where you're comfortable with yourself and you love yourself, trying to find it in other things, other places, other people is just not going to cut it. And that's a forever sort of cycle that you will find yourself in. And so once again, I'm sort of bringing sort of to light this the importance of finding good professional help in that sense.
Wow, thank you, Lyle. Because I'm finding that more men are starting to come forward, which makes me excited.
Mm, mm,
Okay,
mm,
but more still needs to come forward.
mm,
Okay, and one of the songs that I sing a lot here in XY Spark is, for example, our suicide rate
mm,
in Alberta, like 3,000 men are dying by suicide each year, and the age, you'd be surprised to see what the age is. Okay, between the ages of, if my memory serves me correctly, between, I think, the ages 25 and 40. So
mm.
those are young men.
Wow. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and we are here and we're saying, uh, from through, as you experience, and as you said something powerful, as you say, mental health has been demonized in some faith traditions, where some persons think it's weak to get out for help, and that's one of the stuff that I've talked about. But have you seen any success stories, Lyle? Have you seen any young man that you have known who have really said, hey, you know what, um, I'm going to take a risk here. I'm going to take a chance. I'm going to what? Have you seen anything like that in your time?
In terms of just in general, young men
In
who,
general, yeah.
yeah, definitely. I've seen young men who, they shouldn't be alive right now. But they made a decision, and it comes down to choices, the choices that you make. Life is a series of choices, and how these experiences happen to how do we choose to respond. And once you start making healthy choices, you're going to see you sort of yourself blaze this trail forward in a positive way. So I've seen young men come a long way, from off of drugs, from in street life, and they're doing positive. There's one young man that I that used to get in trouble for graffiti, and I remember I saw him at the skate park. And a fabulous story, we became friends, and we just had this love for streetwear. And so I said, yo, Jackie, what you need to do, man, is instead of writing on walls and stuff, put that on a shirt. And so what we did was we took his talent and we put it on shirts, on clothing. He started a clothing brand. He was probably 15 at the time. And so I found an outside private investor. And so we invested in his business. And I mean, the positivity from that, to show him that he has something, within his hands from himself. And he created it. And that blessed someone else. And so this idea of entrepreneurship, I think, is important as well. There's so many skills within people and talents that people have that are just unlocked. But if they just had the opportunity, if someone could see beyond where they are and say, hey, you know what? You've got a skill, a talent. I'm going to help you to develop that. I think that also helps with self-efficacy, self-esteem, self-value, because now, wow, I can do something. I can create something. And so I've seen numerous stories of success when it comes to men.
And that's powerful, because I think sometimes that's the spark that's missing. And we talk about the spark, igniting the spark in you, recognizing what your talent is, bringing that talent to the surface. And I believe that is something that we have to pay more attention to, because sometimes, as you rightly say, the young men, they do have skills, and but they don't realize that it's a skill. They see it as, well, hey, I'm just a graffiti artist.
Right.
When if someone say, actually, you're not just a graffiti artist, you're an amazing artist, and we're going to take it and we're going to make it more sellable and more attractive,
Mm-hmm.
and you are going to get your name more out. And definitely that's self-empowering. You said something, Lyle, that I love. In my book, Giving Myself Permission to Grow, one of the things that I wrote about in it is that one of the greatest gifts that we have as human beings is the gift of choice. And then you mentioned about the gift of choice. And in my book, I wrote about how we can use the gift of choice as a positive or a negative influence.
Yeah, facts.
And so I want to continue to encourage those who are listening or watching us live that, hey, guess what? All you've got to do is make that decision to use the gift of choice for a positive role. And I believe it's going to change lives. So youth and healthy masculinity, you're saying, Lyle, I think what I hear you saying is, our youth can be exposed to more healthy masculinity if we recognize them in their giftedness, seek to become better role models, and empower them so that self-esteem and self-efficacy can be renewed. And I think that is powerful.
Yeah, what it is, and I think what we can do, if we can do this and do this well, is what we need to start to do is create safe places and safe spaces for men, young or old, to come. Because a lot of times men are suffering in silence. Isolated, dealing with their own issues and emotions. And what happens is they usually just cave up. And so if we could create safe places and spaces for people to move and navigate and function, that's going to be one of our saving graces. Because if you create that safe place and you can get them there, I mean, then you can start to share empowerment, wisdom, health, finances. The list is long. But we need to be able to galvanize them and say, okay, here's a place that you can come. I found that within my adolescence, there were places that I could frequent where I knew that I wouldn't be judged, that I would be accepted. I know I'm talking about the church through this, but there was a place, I grew up in Toronto, VP and Ellesmere, and there was a place called the church. And it was a Sunday church. We didn't really know about what they taught, but all we knew that on Monday nights at 8:00, doesn't matter where, people would come from different hoods and sometimes there would be beef, but we knew that we could go and we can play basketball. And the person, I guess he was a pastor at the time, this older guy, he knew that they were just literally just reckless and ratchet young men. Sometimes some of them had peace on them. They had the burner on them, but he knew that this was a safe place for them to come. And, between that hour and a half, the streets were safe because we were playing. And everybody looked forward to that. And I think a lot of people for that hour and a half for many years, that 1 hour and a half, that was their place that they could go to and sort of rest their head. There was peace and safety. And so I say that to say, if we can create places that people could come to where they can work on their craft, where they can receive, counseling, where they could be taught about life skills. I mean, I think the possibility and there's this quote that says, I'm paraphrasing now. It says, the two most important days of your life are the day you're born, and secondly, the day that you find out what you're meant to do. And so once that young man or old man, or whichever man, finds out their purpose, and I believe that God has given every one of us a purpose. What they were divinely designed to do, man, you wake up differently. You get out of bed differently. You put on your clothes differently. There's certain people you don't mess with because you know that you have this thing to accomplish, to do. And so if we could just get people to find out and even taste that what might be their purpose, I'm telling you, game changer.
Wow. And I'm going to jump on something that you said because I love it, because that is the passion of XY Spark. That's our long-term goal. We are passionate about providing a safe space, a place where men can come. And right now, I just want to say, you can reach out to us here at XY Spark. You can email us at hyman@xyspark.info. You can subscribe to us. You can reach out to us. We're here. And in my own way, I am a psychotherapist. So if it's counseling you're looking for, we are saying XY Spark wants to provide that for you. Okay. And what Lyle is saying, I'm telling you, in my own way, guys, I'm going to be sharing my own story with you here in XY Spark, because I want you to know something here, that I'm a psychotherapist today. But I didn't get up out of bed being a psychotherapist. And I'm going to share with you on XY Spark one of my stories. I'm going to be sharing my story. Maybe I'll be sharing my story on my podcast one of these evenings. You joining the podcast, XY Spark at podbean.com. But I'm going to be sharing my story for you to understand why I am passionate about going and taking XY Spark across the globe. That's a big vision, Lyle. To take XY Spark across the globe and provide a space where men can come and say, hey, you know what? This place where I'm in, I'm going to be okay. You know something, Lyle, man? I appreciate what you shared with us tonight, man. I don't know if you have any closing comments, anything particularly you'd like to say to our young men before we wrap up our broadcast tonight.
I want to say this, man. I want to credit one of my mentors, one of my OGs, one of my old heads, who's constantly spoke life to me. His name is, Pastor Eddie Hippolyte. He would always say this, and this is a term he's coined. He would say, when people write you off, God has a bigger pen. And so, that means to say that, like, ever since I was young, I'm this young Black male, grew up in Toronto. There was this one teacher actually who, she looked at me and she said, "Wow, you think your beautiful smile and your nice, pretty white teeth are going to get you anywhere in life?" She said, "You're going nowhere in life." And I remember that day because as masculine and macho as I was, as a bad man I remember I went home and I cried myself to sleep. That teacher that was supposed to speak life into me actually spoke words of death. And it was a self-fulfilling prophecy, because all throughout high school, I thought I wasn't good enough. I wasn't academic. I wasn't, I should work with my hands. I should do a trade, And so, but it's interesting because back to the Bible once again, there's a text that says, life and death are in the power of the tongue. And so that day, although she spoke death to me, there were people like Mr. McIntosh, there were people like Brother Ashmead, like they spoke life. And it's important, I think, that we speak life into these young men, into men's lives. I feel that we don't get enough positive affirmation, which is huge. They say that over 80% of our internal conversation is negative. And so we're constantly, no, I can't do it. No, I'm not good enough. And that's because it's been reinforced by people within our lives, even sometimes our parents. I thank God for my mother personally. Shout out to my mom, Lyle Notice, because no matter what I was doing or what I was involved in, she always made me feel as if I could do it. There was a time where I was into track and field. She provided my bus fare. There was a time when I was doing acting. She would drive me to my auditions. I never felt held back. I never felt as if my hands were tied. She always made me feel that there was an opportunity that I could do something. And that for me, and knowing that I had a loving mother, a loving parent, even though my father wasn't there, honestly, till this day, my self-esteem and my self-confidence is high, because I know that she loves me. I know that she poured into me. I know that I was given opportunities. I was told that I could do it. I was supported. And I say this to say, a lot of the times men are struggling because we don't have that affirmation. No one told us that we could do it. No one told us that we were smart enough. No one told us that we had the skills. No one told us that we were loved. This idea of macho, we don't need no. We need a healthy level of love. We need, we are human beings. We are made to love. We are made to connect. And so the more isolated we are from people and love and our emotions and cut off our emotions, I think that it does us a disservice. And so I say this to say a key couple themes: affirmation. We need to affirm men. I say also love and show love and what that looks like. Just because you have emotions and, you have feelings, it doesn't make you any less than a man. Also support and safe places. These are key themes. If we could provide this, I think that men would become more healthy and become, I think, more responsive, and they would communicate their feelings. A lot of times, we don't talk. We bottle it up. And so creating safe places where we can dialogue, where we can talk, we can really chop it up. Mm-hmm. And get into what we're feeling, what we're going through. I think we need, going forward, we need to break that cycle, the cycle of not talking about things, of keeping things bottled in, and then all of a sudden it's an explosion. Let's talk about it. Mm-hmm. And so, those are some of the things that help me to get where I'm at. And if anyone's listening to you, I just want to say this, from my motivational side, never let anyone speak death to you. Understand that God has a bigger pen, and you may have had a couple bad chapters, but your story's not finished yet. You have the choice, the power of choice, to believe that you can do something, that you can better your life, that you can become a better human being, a better man. The potential in you is far greater than those naysayers that are saying that you can't do it. The potential in you is far greater than the pain that you're going through. And so I just want to encourage someone. I want to speak to someone and say, and speak life to them, that your change is coming. Your change is right now. The fact that you tuned in, the fact that you listened, the fact that you're engaged in this, your life is about to change.
Thank you, Lyle. Guys, only on XY Spark. I'm telling you, Lyle, we are so excited. Thank you. Guys, I want you to keep this message in mind, that your pain, does not supersede your potential.
Yes, come on
Okay,
now.
that's a good note. I think that we can wrap up our live broadcast. And please, guys, if you want more, please continue to tune into XY Spark. We have some other exciting guests come up. Lyle, let me tell you, man, one brother to the next. I thank you so much, man, for being here with us tonight. It was
Sure.
definitely a wonderful experience. And guys, if you want to continue to hear more, please don't be afraid to subscribe to XY Spark at podbean.com. Look us up on YouTube. Join our Facebook page. Tell other men that something powerful is going on here on XY Spark, because we have just gotten the wheels turning. We have a lot more
Mhm.
exciting things to come. And I know Lyle is a busy guy, but I'm going to bring him back again. I'm going to
Sure.
plan to have some sort of a summit where I'm going to have guys like Lyle and other men just coming in, because guys, I'm telling you, we are here and we believe in healthy masculinity, and we want to bridge that gap, and we want to take our rightful place on this planet and be the men that we're supposed to be, because at the end of the day, guys, let me tell you, just like says, your potential supersedes your pain. Lyle, thank you so much for being us. Thank you for joining us in XY Spark. And guys, we look forward for you to join us again for another live broadcast. If we're going to be going live, you can look for our notifications on our Facebook page. In the meantime, guys, we want to say you have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Lyle, thank you again for joining us.
Sure.
You take care.
All right.
Please join Rolando next time on XY Spark as he engages us in practical discussions that promotes healthy masculinity and challenge men to live extraordinary lives. At XY Spark, we believe there's a spark in you.